All right, everybody.
I'd let your city burn to the ground.
I've got 6:30. I'm going to call to order this March 4th Public Safety Services Delivery Working Group for this evening, March 4th, 2024. Can we have a roll call, please, Ray?
Jordan Wittrin.
Present.
Jeffrey One.
Present.
Carol Allen.
Here.
Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
Twyla Harrington.
Here.
Rich Allen.
Here.
Ray, yes, I'm here. All present and accounted for, Mr. Chair.
Perfect. Can I get everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. On to item number 2, public comment. We'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Anything not on the agenda this evening? I'm not seeing anybody in chambers this evening. Is there anybody out on Zoom wanting to make a public comment this evening? Waiting. Please unmute yourself. And I am not seeing or hearing anybody. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment this evening. Go ahead and move on to item number 3. Consent agenda, item 3.1, our minutes from our February 5th meeting. Assuming everybody has had a chance to take a look at our meeting minutes from February 5th. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? As I look around, I see a lot of shaking heads. No, no, no. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes from February 5th, 2024.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from February 5th, 2024. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? That consent agenda carries. Moving right ahead, we are going to go right into item number 4, Ray.
Rock and roll. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of you probably know the history of fire service in this town, maybe better than I. But for many, many years, for decades, fire service in East County was the sole control province of Fire District 10. Fire District 10 was an independent government agency that covered everything pretty much east of 130th, 140th, somewhere in there, all the way out through Gresham, Troutdale, and East Multnomah County. Then, as you recall, in the 70s, when Portland and Gresham started eating up the unincorporated mid-county area, those cities got bigger. I guess they wanted control. They wanted their own department. So Portland created their own fire department. Well, before then did, but East County, Gresham decided they wanted. So in 1995, the East County cities, I think it was Troutdale, was in 1995, voted to leave Fire District 10. And I can't really find information as to why, what was the logic behind doing it. I think there was some concern that they thought we could get fire service cheaper than what people were paying on their property taxes. May have been it. I haven't found the voters pamphlet for 1995, so I don't know what the rationale was. But they decided to put it into the general fund, which, you know, and I think the vote was probably before the passing of Measure 5 and 50. It was about that same time we were going through all the property tax revolts back in the mid-90s, and 5 and 50 were passed. So I think that in all that tumultuous uproar, there was a thought to reduce property taxes by that way, by putting it into the general fund. And so at that time, we then started contracting with Gresham Fire Department for fire services out in East County. Then in 2005, interesting enough, the city of Gresham had a vote to go back to Fire District 10. And it lost 2-1. And I do have a lot of the voter pamphlet statements from that. And it sounds like, first of all, they didn't communicate very well a really good reason why they were going to go back to Fire District 10. And still alive were Don McIntyre and what else? Ted Sizemore, Frank Eisensimmer, all the people that have been the major pushes for Measure 5 and 50 were still screaming about property taxes. Gussie McRobert, a former mayor of Gresham, was screaming about it. And they were complaining about the numbers weren't good and we're maybe not going to get it cheaper. It was just something that never really, I think, was presented to the citizens very well. So it continued. Gresham Fire Department continued. We continued to contract with them through 2015. And now, of course, we're moving up to 2025 when our contract ends. And we share, I think, as you all know, we share a contract with Wood Village and Fairview. So we're all in the same boat together on this one. So that's a little bit of the history of fire service in Troutdale. The price of fire service is now rising up to about, I think it's $2.6 million in this year's budget is what we pay for fire service, as opposed to Fire District 10. When we were in Fire District 10, when we contract with Gresham, we are simply a customer. We have no say over who they hire as fire chief. We have no say over how they provide the quality of service. We have no say over their budget. We have no say over their union contract. They don't talk to us really. Well, we have a bi-monthly fire users meeting, but it's more giving us information. We don't have any say in how they operate it. And what an example I give people how this works is, we had Mitch Schneider before Chief Lewis was the fire chief, and everybody seemed to like Mitch. We enjoyed it. He worked really well with the cities and in the Safer Council, and he was doing really well. Well, he was not getting along with, try to keep it as much as I can in the public information side of it. He was not getting along with the city manager and another supervisor over at the city of Gresham. Another thing, we don't have any control over the internal politics of the city of Gresham either. And he was frustrated, and they were frustrated with him until he resigned based on the frustration. And we did not find out until a week after he submitted his resignation letter that he had resigned. And I never got an explanation as to why the prior city manager at Gresham didn't just call up the three cities and said, hey, by the way, our fire chief, your fire chief, has resigned. No, I had to find about it in the paper. And they wouldn't even give me his letter of resignation until I called the Outlook and they gave it to me. But Gresham wouldn't give it to me. That is the struggle we have now with our fire service is that we are a user that is beholden to Gresham and how they operate it, but they give us the bill over a system we have no control over. So that's kind of a little bit of the history. I mean, as you've looked through all the paperwork, you've got a whole bunch of stuff, and I tried not to overload you. I mean, you should see I took excerpts out of a number of different reports because there's a lot of paper if you look at the whole report, and I didn't know if the whole reports were that germane. If you want them, I'm more than happy to email them to you. Just let me know after the meeting if you really want the full reports from either Portland State in 2014, the USC study in 2020, 23, which is what Wood Village had done. Any of those things you want, be happy to give them to you. I think at this point in terms of the study, I think even though there are some people who express, what if, why doesn't Troutdale or the three cities do their own fire department? One of the biggest problems with that is cost of setup. As Chief Lewis told the council last week, I mean, just one fire truck is $500,000, and we don't own it. Second of all, we don't own any fire stations. The fire station in town up on Cherry Park is owned by Fire District 10, and they allow Gresham to use it. So we don't own any property for a fire station, so we would have to acquire property and build fire stations. And if you look at those reports, they talked about several different models of building 2 fire stations, 1 primary fire station, 1 satellite fire station, and then you take all those numbers from 10 years ago, and you probably have to add 50% more to all the costs that they put in there in terms of establishing a fire department. And I think you're easily looking at, with property acquisition, construction costs, buying equipment, you're probably looking at, and recruiting and training, fire people, you're looking at probably $10 million, which is going to have to come from a bond levy from the citizens. So I think that is what's kind of held down the idea of pursuing that as an option. And so Any questions on history before because I can roll right into 5, Mr. Chair.
Just a clarification, you were saying an engine was $500,000, and if I remember correctly, actually Chief Lewis said it was $750,000, and they're projected at
3 years?
the time to get an engine was 18 months to 2 years, and the truck was $1.5 million, and that one was closer to 3 years to get the truck.
Yeah.
So timing was huge on what they're trying to order and place orders. And then also Chief Lewis told us when he was at council was even the cost, if the cost goes up by the time, hey, 3 years rolls around, we actually get the truck, whatever the cost is at that time, whatever city's ordering is going to be on the hook for that amount. And other cities are waiting for them. So if we don't buy it or Gresham doesn't buy it, then there would be just moving on to the next city because somebody else is going to take it. It's that much in demand. So just for those of you who didn't listen to the last council meeting, I'm just trying to elaborate a little bit more of what Chief Lewis had to say. So
Yeah, I think that kind of does start rolling into 5, and I think it's something, I know staff, we've said that we don't think it's worth the time and effort, but it's your city. If you say, no, let's go out and figure out what it would cost to create a fire department. The other problem with that, of course, is training. In a smaller fire department, you have less variety of skill sets and vehicles to do certain things. And we've got everything from water rescue to, 3 million square foot Amazon fulfillment center, and then residential houses. We have quite a diverse these days, potential fire needs in the city. But I guess, Chair, maybe that's the first thing. Does anybody think it's worthwhile to do like we do with police, to get a study, what it would cost to do that? I don't want to presume that that's not on the table. So I'd like it to come from you guys.
and then also just kind of elaborating at the beginning, when we talked about Fire District 10 back in the 90s and when it was dissolving, I did pick my brother-in-law's brain, who recently retired as a fire chief, battalion chief for the city of Portland, because I was trying to refresh my brain as well. He said, yeah, it was all, the way it was portrayed, it was all about cost and cost savings and what they could do. So at least, it's an opinion, trying to resurrect, but yes, going back to Ray's point, do we want to try to get a study going of what it would take? But obviously we could sit here and do the quick math of just a truck, an engine, and land, construction. It's talking about a big nut. And the two gentlemen to my right, I know you guys have kind of been down a lot of this road before, a lot of this discussion before. I'm really interested to know what you guys think or say, or what's popping through your brain at the moment. But boy, these 20,000 mile view look like some big numbers that we would have to find a way to overcome through some sort of bond levy to try to get something going. So.
Well, I guess I'll start. I would agree with you. I think it's pretty daunting, but the next question is it really going to get any cheaper? If you decide to do this 5 years from now, is it going to be a better deal in 5 years than it is now? Probably not.
No.
And, if we were meeting the response times and those things, I'd be less apt to dig into this. But the fact that we're not meeting them, you look at, like in this report, it talks about how Troutdale's, most of them are pushing 6 minutes, 5.7, 5.8, and the average is 4. So we're not even kind of remotely close to those. And, part of the mistake sometimes is not doing anything. And so it's kind of like, what do we want to do? What do we want this to look like? I would imagine we're going to have to form a fire district. And then secondly, we're probably going to have to bond the capital things that we need. But like you mentioned, land and equipment, those two things, I don't think either one of those is gonna get any cheaper and any easier. And I also think, you know, if Gresham's gonna go from 2.9 to 5 million, do you really wanna pay that much of an increase for what you're getting today? And the other question I have, which I don't know, is if there's a second station built for Troutdale, who's gonna pay for that? Is Gresham gonna pay for that? I doubt it. I think they're gonna ask us to go out and find the money, right, Ray?
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's the, how can you convince the city of Gresham voters to approve a bond levy to construct a fire station in Troutdale?
So
That's a loser from the very beginning.
If we added any infrastructure, we'd probably be paying for that anyhow. So I guess if you're gonna pay for all these things, would you just wanna do it yourself? Or do you wanna hitch on? And the whole argument for years has been that Gresham wants us to pay for their capital costs. And we're a service user, we shouldn't be paying for capital costs. We don't own it.
Well, question, if we don't figure this out, do we not have to pay it no matter what we end up doing? Or if we do a fire district with Gresham, does that not put us in the same situation we're in today?
You could.
Just as a thought process there.
Maria, maybe you know better than us, but if we're all in a fire district together, Gresham, Troutdale, Wood Village, and Fairview, or if we're all in Fire District 10 together, then we communicatively own everything. We wouldn't be all on the hook, just one community, right?
Correct. If we join Fire District 10, then Fire District 10 is the one who puts up the bond levy
Right.
for the three communities. And the isolated pockets in Multnomah County, I got a map in here somewhere that shows, but Fire District 10 really is responsible for an area southeast of Barlow High School, out there where that new fire station is out there. And then they're responsible for a couple little pockets right at the border with Clackamas County at South Gresham. And I think they do, don't they do Blue Lake? I mean, Interlochen up there, I think is another pocket that they have.
Don't they do Sandy Dale too?
I don't know. They might.
What they had Sandy Dale?
They might, right outside the city limits, they might do that area. So because if you don't know, Fire District 10 still exists, has a board of 5 people, but all they do is to collect tax money, and then they write a check to the city of Gresham to provide fire service to its areas. It's what they do. Because they're not big enough to justify their own fire department anymore either. But they still exist as an entity. And I don't think I gave you, no, I didn't give you, and I should send this to you. The city of Gresham, just about 2 years ago, did a financial report, and it actually went through and analyzed the process and costs of either joining Fire District 10 or creating a new fire district. It's a little bit harder to create a new fire district from scratch as opposed to joining an existing one. And the difference is the maximum tax rate, as I recall, under Fire District 10 is $2.80 a thousand. I think if you created a new taxing district, a new fire district, it'd be like $2.40.
Oh.
But
Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of difference.
no, it wasn't a whole lot. It was a little bit less, I think. But it was interesting that they actually went through and they went through that analysis. But I'll go on to the kind of the next agenda, because it kind of all flows together now. But other than the committee saying, let's spend $15,000-$20,000 and find a consultant who would work up a cost to create a Troutdale Fire Department, establishment costs and annual costs. And based on other fire, if you looked at Wood Village, didn't they do a nice job of listing different area fire departments and how much other fire departments and cities cost? I mean, you can't imagine it would cost any less than $4 million a year for us to operate a fire department of our own. And we're paying about $2.6 million to Gresham right now. We own our own and we have to do all their own property. But unless you tell me otherwise, go ahead and get a consultant, that's great. But number one, the two options are continue with the city of Gresham or join a fire district. With the city of Gresham, we've got a number of concerns continuing with them, not personally, even though we are consistently getting a slower response time than the citizens of Gresham. I included in your packet probably a crass term is called talking points. But when the whole issue came up that, and so I'm getting to in a second, is the city of Gresham Council going, well, why aren't Troutdale, Fairview, and Wood Village paying the exact same amount per capita or per housing cost as the city of Gresham? They should be paying more. And so that came up in May of 2023. There were statements in council about we need to charge the three cities more. And then Mayor Stovall said in November that the three cities combined are paying $4 million less than they should be if they were city of Gresham residents. We've asked several times, they've never been able to tell us where they got that $4 million figure. But honestly, if you take property tax values and what the cost of the fire department is, the three cities are probably paying about $2.5 to $3 million less than we should be paying if we were going to pay the equal amount of the citizens of Troutdale. But that memo I added in here, Gresham, thank you. The memo added here was all the arguments why that's not even a discussion starter, because we shouldn't be paying the same amount as the citizens of Gresham, because as you see from looking at all our quarter reports, we do not get as fast a response time consistently across the board than the citizens of the city of Gresham. And as I listed all the issues, I did it earlier, we don't have any say in anything about how they operate. So
just for clarity, just moving from 4 to 5 on our discussion points.
yeah,
Any more on the history of fire service in Troutdale before we move on to 5? Any more discussion points here before we move on to 5? For the history of where we're at. Okay, so officially we're going to move on to agenda number 5 and reviewing discussion of relevant resources materials regarding fire service.
so if you take Gresham's threats, they would be expecting our $2.6 million to go up to over $4 million in the 25-26 budget year, coming out of the general fund. If you look at some of the estimates, and I think they were in Wood Village's report, we were part of Fire District 10, we could expect our property taxes would be providing about $4 million to the fire district. So the cost is going to go up substantially either way you do it to the city if we stay with Gresham Fire. The other thing with Gresham Fire is to remember is that Gresham Fire is struggling themselves to afford their own fire service. Well over 90 or 95% of their general fund revenues go toward fire, police, and 911. Troutdale is less than 60%. So we're not using up as much of our general fund as they are. They failed a bond levy last year. They have another bond levy on for May of this year. They're asking the citizens, did we ever figure out what it was? I think it was $1.30 a thousand, something like that. They lost at $1.50 a thousand property tax increase, and they kind of reduced it down to $1.30 to help cover their shortfall in fire and police. But those bond levies only last 5 years. They have to do it again. And what a lot of people are saying, even in Gresham, are going, why are we wasting our time with the stopgap measure? If we're going to charge people more on their property taxes, why not just go to a fire district and do the full Marion and go to 240 and just know it's all taken care of and we don't have to worry about it again, because that's a permanent thing. I'm thinking, for what I've heard lately, is their thought maybe try to get this passed for 5 years, and then they've got 5 years to figure out what they're going to do next, such as maybe Fire District 10. Did I put the packet in here, the letter from the 3 city mayors to Gresham Mayor Stovall?
Yes.
That to you? Okay. Yeah, we have asked them, let's get back to the table and start again. Let's go back to the Safer Council, talk about Fire District 10. Let's go back and talk about, let's negotiate, what our contract might look like beyond 2025. Are we interested in maybe a shorter contract so we can explore those options? I will say with Gresham, I think they're slow to the party. The reality is if our cities are going to be able to afford a robust fire department and continue to pay for police and parks, they're going to have to be given the option of a fire district. And Gresham is starting to accept that as reality. They are now looking, they haven't gotten one yet, they're looking for a consultant to help them figure out how that would work and what it would cost. And the 3 cities have already talked among the city managers and mayors and says, if they do, we'll hire that same consultant to do the same thing for us, so that we'll know what that would mean for us to join Fire District 10. But they haven't found anybody yet. So for Gresham, they are going to be struggling in the future to figure this out, and I think they're going to be doing that. In talking unofficially with electeds over at Gresham, it seems like they'd be willing to talk a 3 to 5 year extension of our contract so that everybody could pursue a fire district to get the citizens prepped and ready for it if they want to do that. So we have a shorter contract. So I don't think the 3 cities among the mayors talking about it have said, we don't want to do another 10 year. We think we need to pursue this other option. And so talking to Gresham. And then the second question of that is, well, what is it going to cost us for those 3 to 5 years? And is Gresham committed to seriously pursuing a fire district? Because, yeah, the city of Troutdale could continue to pay, say, $4 million out of the general fund, but I know it won't make the budget committee or the council happy to have that big, because that 1.5 increase is approximately 10% of our total general fund revenues. Just that increase. And every year that Measure 5 and 5th year in existence, and this has been going on now for almost 30 years, the margins is getting less and less, and it's going to be a bigger problem down the road for cities to afford stuff. So this is that off-ramp to join Fire District 10 that will cost citizens more. Let me do the math. I think it's close to like $600 annually per average residential home in Troutdale. But we do all of a sudden get control of a fire department that we don't have now, and we free up money in the general fund. Now, as part of that equation, I've got another whole file I didn't bring, but I have a file on what Newburgh did. 5 years ago, Newburgh had their own fire department, but they found out the same thing that most every city in the metro area has found out: we can't afford a fire department in our general fund anymore. So the Newburgh Fire Department put a ballot measure on for their citizens. In fact, they put 2 ballot measures on for their citizens. One was to join the Tualatin Valley Fire District and then roll their fire department into the Tualatin Valley. And the second ballot measure was, if they passed that first one, it would automatically reduce their permanent tax rate for the city's general fund by a certain amount, a big chunk initially, and then it would go back up over, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 years, back up to the regular level. So they were saying, all right, citizens, we know you're going to pay, say, $600 annually per household for this new thing, but the first year, the city's going to save you $600 a household by not taking that same amount out of your property tax bill for the line item city of Troutdale. And then it was going to go up like 3% additionally a year. So I do the math, it took about 30 years to get it back. I think that's a little, personally, I think that's a little too much too quickly, because one of the selling points for this, and one of the things that I think a lot of citizens are concerned about, and the citizens, is having additional money for police and parks too. Getting a brand new park on the waterfront, and maintaining our parks. Some people would like them maintained better, so it frees up money in our general fund. So but that is something that we could do similar to that. One of the things I've thrown out there as a starter is, if we save $2.6 million in the general fund the first year, say, for the fire department, that the city buys down our property tax rate, say 1.3 million or 1.5 million. So we tell the citizens, if you approve this measure, we're going to not make it at $2.40 a thousand. It's the same thing we do with this building, the bond levy on this building. You're paying a bond levy for the construction of the police building. However, what you pay in your property tax bill, the budget committee and the city council approve. We take a lot of the lease payments, $180,000 a year, and we pay down so that you're not getting charged what you could be charged for the bond levy for the building, because the city's using the income from the rental to pay down your rate. And so if I'm talking in circles and confusing you all, essentially what I'm saying is, I think part of the offer to the citizens, if you go a fire district and have that vote, is that yes, it'll cost you more money, but we get more control, we get more stable funding, we free up money for police and parks, and to soften the blow, we will do X with your property taxes you pay to the city to save you some money on the property taxes you're now gonna be paying for the fire district. Does that make sense?
So let's pause that.
Okay,
and
because
let's
sometimes I
do-
keep talking and I wonder if I'm
Right,
making
let's
sense.
just make sure everybody's good and
Yeah.
understands what Ray is saying. I've heard it before a couple of times and I understand it, but I just want to make sure everybody else in the room understands what Ray is saying, so. I see a shaking head, yes. Carol?
I'm understanding what he's saying. I have questions about some things.
This is an open discussion, go
Okay,
ahead and
so,
let it rip.
so when I look at the report from Wood Village, fire discussion, I see that we're paying currently 2.7 million and some odd dollars for fire costs. But Gresham is wanting us to now pay $5 million instead of,
They haven't
the two.
told us what they want us to pay,
okay,
but
so I'm going
Right.
by this.
yeah, I think if you look at that, if you calculate out what we would be paying, I had Eric Mueller do this, it's kind of a complicated financial, because the city of Gresham, they have a budget of, say, roughly $30 million for their fire department, all right? And then they get income from the 3 cities that works out to, say, $5 million, all right? So they're paying $25 million for their fire service. So what they do then is they take all of the assessed value of property that they're taxed on in the whole city of Gresham, which is, I don't know, $12 billion or something on that paperwork. And then they divide the two and they work it out to that the citizens of Gresham are paying approximately $2.35 off the top of my head per thousand just for fire service in the city of Gresham. So then they take the $2.35 that Gresham is paying, and then they apply that $2.35 to the $1.9 billion of assessed value in Troutdale. And they say then Troutdale to pay the same rate, they're trying to figure out a way to do apples to apples. And that's how they kind of reduce the numbers down to it. So that since they can figure out what Gresham is paying per thousand, they figure out then what Troutdale, if we were paying the same rate, what it would be.
But are we not a smaller town than Gresham,
Right.
for one? So why would we be paying the same amount that Gresham would be paying?
We would be paying the same amount per thousand of assessed value. So that we are paying less, but because we're a smaller city in terms of, so that they're essentially saying we should be paying $4 to $5 million. The citizens in the city of Gresham should be paying 25 or 26 million. Is what they're saying. Yeah, we pay less, but they want us to pay the comparable, exact same per assessed value, what the city of Gresham citizens pay.
But we don't get any of the capital assets that get
Correct.
paid for.
Right.
Correct.
Or control or all,
You
all
don't
the,
get any say in anything. So I, as a citizen, would be going, why are we paying $2.7 million now and we have no say? I mean, that kind of, that concerns me.
well, that's why we're paying less, is part, you know, the argument is, we are paying less than the citizens of Gresham are, because we don't get the control.
Right, but-
Or the assets.
Or the
training,
assets,
Or
or-
the
yeah.
say, or, yeah.
Right, but I would look at it, if we had a say, I'd look at it a little differently, but we don't have a say. So if they were to say no on anything, it'd be a no, because we wouldn't have a say.
Right,
We wouldn't even have an option of arguing the no.
Yeah.
So my question is would it be beneficial to join District 10? What would that look like if we talked about going with District 10?
what would it look like? Well, one, you would have a new line item on your property tax bill that says Fire District 10, and it will say $600 be added to your bill on your property taxes. That's the first thing it looks like. Second of all, when we do to become part of Fire District 10, you have to have the citizens of the people who want in to vote yes, and you have to have the citizens of Fire District 10, 7 or 8 people, I don't know how many are in there now.
Yeah.
They have to vote yes also. And so when both sides say, yes, we want to get married, then it happens. And then they're responsible, they collect the property taxes, and they are responsible for running the fire service. That's kind of the mechanism. And it would take a couple of years. It's like any school district bond levy. You got to get your strategies, you got to get citizen groups, because public employees, we can't be involved in bond levies. We don't get to have any say or give you an opinion on them. So it has to be, the council can take an opinion, because they're elected officials, and citizens can form committees. Like, I don't know, Tanny, Carol, Rich, who was around? You guys had a citizens committee to do bond levy for this building, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, and you took 2 bites at the apple to get it, right?
For this one?
Yeah,
No. One.
I thought one before that failed. Okay, so that's what you need to do. If you take a couple of years, you get a consultant and you have a citizen group that are pushing it.
But then we would know, the money would come out of the general fund, be in a separate line item. It would free up money in the general fund or autonomy in the general fund. And then we would just be dealing with District 10, contracted with them. We would no longer deal with Gresham, even though we would have the same Gresham services, it'd be up to District 10's contract with Gresham. And then that rate that we're paying for District 10, that's not gonna change. We already know what that rate is, correct?
Right, the thing is though, that we're not contracting with Fire District 10.
Right,
We are Fire District 10.
Yeah, we are part of it. It's not a contract. We're part of that.
We own part of it now. We own
Yeah.
their because they own the training center at 191st and Halsey, and they own the fire station here.
We're part of that group. We're part of
Yeah.
that entity. So,
We're mixing ourselves into it.
well, I mean, this is just me, I'd be more apt to pay $600 extra and have a say as a citizen of Troutdale and pay Gresham $600 and have no say whatsoever. I'm more apt to say, I want to say. I would assume, I could be wrong, but I would assume that Troutdale residents would want to have us to have a say.
it's gonna be trying to explain that to everybody.
Right.
It's gonna be the hard part.
That's the hard
It has to be explained in
Because it's
what's
gonna be on a
in-
different line item. Everybody's gonna think. But then like Ray was saying, the same vote is trying to, I like the idea of saying, hey, we're gonna buy this down a little bit so it isn't gonna hit so hard.
Correct.
I
So.
just want to say, whoa, I'm the one who pays the taxes.
Right.
All right, Tanny.
Oh, he writes the check, huh?
Tanny,
But how much are we buying it down? You look at,
we have,
you know, you go to Fire District 10, you're looking at a 30% increase in property taxes right there.
and Gresham's wanting even more than that.
Yeah. So I mean, the overall bill goes up 30%. And how much you buying that down for? And can you make a good enough argument to people? I mean, like right now, let's say you raise it 20%, 15 or 20%, it's the same thing. They're gonna be going, why are we doing this?
Right, it's hard.
You gotta be able to make a compelling argument that it's going up and this is what you're gonna get for it.
Right, well,
But it could go up 35 or 40% and get the same thing. Right, if Gresham has their way.
And not if any of us wanna keep our jobs. Right?
Correct.
well, and I think part of this is what are you getting is one of the things is you hopefully are getting, we've talked about the control issue over the whole
Right.
system. We're hopefully gonna get improved response times because now we have a say in what the fire district does and their service model. I mean, one of the things we worked with the Gresham for years, all of you are aware that 90% of all fire calls are medical. There's no fire going on. But a fire truck rolls. And so there's this whole thing about what kind of response should we have for these areas? And can we get there faster to meet most of those medical calls anyway? And, you know, there's always the issues. You talk to firemen, well, it's a good thing to have the truck there because it's more help when you're there. The fire truck there's another call that comes in for fire. They're already out on the road, ready to go to there. But then again, what if they're on the opposite side of the district and they have to go to the other side of the district? You know, who knows how that works out. You know, to firemen, it doesn't sound that odd to have to send all these trucks, but then again, you have to ask yourself, well, it's just job security too.
It's culture, it's what they're used to.
Right, that's what they're used to.
But Chief Lewis was very open about, they plain don't go to anything anymore unless it's a major medical. They try to put off
Yeah.
calls, so. Jeffrey.
So I think for me, it just comes down to two questions. Is one of them more important than the other? And then I would ask this, it comes down to what do you want? What do we want from our fire service? And then is that more important than cost? Right, so what are we asking for versus what we're not getting now? And then are those things more important than the cost to us as a whole? to me, that's what it kind of comes down to, and I would say, I think I totally agree with you in that I think one of the things we're not getting is a say. Like, and I can't believe that we don't get a say. It's really surprising to me to have found that out. And I don't see how somebody can provide a service to you without involving you, at least in that process, having a seat at the table, and whether it's a voting seat or whatever, but able to be there. But I think that the other big thing that we're not getting is the response times, right? So we as a city pay for a service to be provided. My parents are getting a little bit older, but I want if they call 911 or my neighbor calls 911, I want that service to be provided and come to them, or if I call 911, whatever. I want that service to be there in the time, a standard time that is set across the nation, whatever that would be. The number is kind of irrelevant at this point, but we just know that is not being met. So to me, the two things that are going to be important are response times and having a say. And I think that those are more important than cost to me. But I would be interested to hear what other people have to say of what's most important to you and how do we move forward to obtain those goals.
Can I before we get to Rich, complicate your comment about response times? Yeah.
Yes.
Part of the response times issue is ambulance response times. And ambulance response times, as the council is going to deal with next Tuesday night, are way substandard to what they should be.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about fire service, and I personally don't think I can involve the ambulance. That's a separate issue to me. When is that fire truck gonna get there? Because that's what we're talking about.
Well, except for fire, yeah, but if you're responding to a medical emergency, if you're gonna rely less upon the fire department, you better then be able to rely upon the ambulance to show up to the medical.
Yeah, but
that's the connection between the
what
two.
I would say is that I have somebody there to take care of me.
Right.
Like, if I need CPR, if somebody is not in the medical field or whatever, that's great, start the CPR, but I really want someone from the medical field with drugs and stuff to come there and be able to administer that. And if it takes a long time, but my initial service, and I think that's what the fire is your initial service, your initial connection to that. Yeah, well, I guess if they come or when they come, right, is the most important thing, but that's specific to what we're talking about here. I don't think you can bundle those in the same bucket.
Yeah, and if you're in Fire District 10 and you're on the board, somebody's on the board of Troutdale, you can demand, we want response times of X, and we'll pay for whatever it takes, so that's true.
Yeah. Rich?
It seems to me that whether you're talking to Gresham or whether you're a minority vote on a fire district, you really don't have much of a say. So if a say is your important goal, then you need the Troutdale Fire Department. If your goal is to have more money for police, then you want to do a fire district. If your goal is faster response time, and that was an important point there, is faster response time of fire or faster response time of medical. But if it's faster response time of fire, then you need to have a station in the north and a station in the south. It's the only way you're going to get it. The other option is if it's for medical, then you have to have a good ambulance contract in which people are pre-staged in areas to respond to calls. So it really comes down to what is your goal? And that's what you got to determine the priority. If your goal is to save money, maybe a successful argument with Gresham saying, stay with Gresham, and we don't get to keep any of the capital equipment, we shouldn't really be paying for it, might get away with paying less. So it really depends on what is your end goal, because each option is better for one end goal versus another.
Just
Is that understandable?
Understandable. I don't know if I totally agree with it 100% though.
Sure.
Because I think if you're in a fire district, yeah, there's minority control, but it is a little bit control. And over time, you get relationships, you get your way a little bit more down the road. It might take a little bit, but at least you have a little bit. And you talk about building another station, having a fire district, it might be easier actually to get another station built with a fire district as opposed to being on our own.
Well, a fire
And-
district is another government entity,
Mhm.
right? So having a minority say on another government entity, isn't that the same thing as Metro is right now? Do you feel like you have much of a say over Metro?
No, and I hear what you're saying, and then
Fire is less political, let's put it.
I hope so. I hope.
It's a single,
You never- but it
single
could
issue
get-
board, that's all they
Yeah,
care about is
Yeah,
fire safety.
is one issue, yeah, and, and then, yeah, you talk about freeing up funds is that, yeah, freeing up funds for police or freeing up funds for fire, but it definitely makes more of a line in the sand, so, but,
Good point.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts. One of those was around the response times, and I think I missed at the last council when that was being broadcast. Did they talk about the root cause of those? Was it that we have that one singular station that's kind of in a different area than the rest of the community? Because I know when they've come to some of the other committees years ago, they did mention that, that this, where the station is now is not a great location for getting out to some of the other areas. So did they mention that?
The question was raised to Chief Lewis,
Oh, we're talking
and,
about 75?
yeah,
Okay.
and there wasn't an exact response. There was a lot of talk about, well, when a station moves up and the station is here, and then, even Corbett can move up and all this, and the question wasn't exactly addressed with Chief Lewis to give an exact answer as far as why our response times may be 30 seconds slower.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just, there was more of a vague answer.
And then the other question I had was on the letter regarding the Safer Council that was sent on January 5th.
Mhm.
Did we get response to that at all from them? Zero?
Nothing,
No?
no
Yeah.
official
When I
response.
asked Mayor Lauer, we had not got a response yet.
Nope, there's been some back channel discussions, I think, among the mayors casually, and they're getting to a point where maybe they feel like they'll officially respond at some point, but I think for Gresham, all their energy is to their bond levy on May 5th, so honestly, I don't think we're gonna hear anything from them until,
Should I go to their council and ask for a response?
yeah, May 7th. Wait, May 7th is the election?
Uh,
I think so, yeah, that's a Tuesday.
Tanny, did you have a question or a comment, sir?
I was gonna say, I agree, Council One, especially looking at it, where are we trying to go? And I don't think you can bring the ambulance conversation into it because that's a separate deal. But at the same time, we've got to look at what we think people can afford. I mean, like, it's gonna be a significant increase either way. And I'm just reading this, and it's like, this is Atterwood Village's report on page 1. There's not a lot of difference between Gresham costs, existing fire districts, or creating a new district based on what the cost increase is projected to be. So it's kind of like, for them, that's basically saying you could do any one of these as effectively.
To run it.
Yeah. And also, I've always wondered this. You send out $1 million fire truck with 3 guys on it. 3 guys can't fight a fire. And that's why we went to the QVC model a few years ago, to try to get 2 guys out there to
Let
be
me back
able
up
to.
here. 3 guys can't fight a fire because it's not some joke about 3 firemen went to a fire and they couldn't, It's
No,
because their
4.
national standards are, before they can enter a building, 4 firefighters have to be present. It's just their rule. So,
Which,
just I want to make sure everybody understood what you meant by that.
and so on a truck, you would probably have all the equipment that you needed for a medical call. But instead, we go out with a fire engine with 3 guys on it. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but it just doesn't seem like it's the most effective model when we've got 78% of our calls being,
No, I'm totally agreeing with you.
78% of the calls being medical, why don't we have something that can do the job faster? But instead, we don't do that, probably for political reasons.
Well, I asked that question at the last council meeting. I don't know if you remember, asking the question of why there's multiple different models that you could use, but a lot of them are medical. So why is there not an ambulance with a crew stationed at every fire station to respond to those calls, to offset their work, right? So if you look, and the big thing for me was that when they created their model, they were running like 5,000 calls a year at the time they created the model. And they have not increased their staffing or anything in their model. And now they're running 15 to 18,000 calls a year. So they are running 3 to 4 times as many calls with the same amount of staffing that they created, 20 to 30 years ago. And so
the only thing they've added is stations.
well, I think they've only added like 1 station since then also. So they really, they're not offsetting any of their work, which puts more stress on the firefighters, people doing the job. They run, what I get around to is if we're asking for response times, if that's something that's important to us, and how do they accomplish that? How do we accomplish getting that? Can we get that with Gresham? That's questions I feel like we'd have to ask them. Is it easier to get that with the fire district? I don't know. I don't know the answers to that.
Because the number of fires per year are so low, much to their success, right? So low, times are driven by the medical responses, right? And when we did that study years back, that's where I came up with that statement I made earlier. It's not coming from me, it's coming from that study in which you have to have a fire station in the north and the south if you're going to draw a circle around it and have quicker response time. But right now, because we have the one fire station, it's very quick, where most of the calls are to, which is the assisted living facility. That's most of the calls right there, and they're close, right? So that's making it look good. But if you try to get down near the river or to your side of the river, it takes a long time. Yeah, you're most likely, if it's a serious medical emergency, you're gone.
And I was gonna say, it's not the same comparison, and I know that, but just for conversation's sake, because I'm closer to Corbett than most people. But you look at theirs and they pay like $1.20 a thousand for fire. And then they have a bond and that brings it up to like $1.60. And so it's about, for the average resident, and this was really sad, it's about $50 more a year than what they pay for the Multnomah County Library for fire service.
They're also a volunteer
Correct.
organization.
How much of that salary?
I think that's offsets a lot by not having salary, but
They're volunteer and they're very, they're a lot like your smaller towns where they're very cost sensitive on their building structures.
absolutely, yeah.
Right. Whereas Portland is like the opposite end of that.
It's just for comparison.
Yeah.
Well, I know working for 2 assisted livings, one at Cherry Park and one at Chestnut Lane in Gresham, we always got fire before we ever got ambulance. No matter which place I was at, we always got fire first. And time-wise, it's not, time-wise was, different because, my mom was Gresham. I worked in Troutdale, so. I'm concerned about response time. If I'm dying, I want the quickest response coming to me rather than, I have to wait because I'm not Gresham.
And personally, just my opinion, if I was a Troutdale resident that had Gresham or a Troutdale resident that had the fire Fire District 10, at least, even if it's minority stake, at least I want to have a little bit to bitch to go to my city council and say, hey, complain, be an advocate at Fire District 10 to advocate or spot. So that's just my personal opinion.
Ray, do you have any insight, or is there anybody that we could talk to ask? I have never lived in a fire district, so I don't know, but to ask, what does it mean to live in a fire district? What does that mean to the citizens? What does it mean to that? How does the city work with that fire district in a more productive manner?
You know, I think the best answer is to bring Mike McKeel in. Mike McKeel's on the board of Fire District 10. He lives within Fire District 10. He's real involved with the city of Gresham. He's kind of the old sage when it comes to fire in East County. And he came to us last October. And now that we're getting farther along, maybe it's a good time to have him back and ask these kind of specific questions now that we're kind of getting close down to rubber meeting the road.
I just think it'd be good to hear what that actually means for the city in terms of, I don't want to say
Just
like,
a
you're gonna do what I
relationship.
want, but how does that relationship work? What would the city get from that? In terms of what we're asking for? How would we accomplish our goals of getting faster response times, quicker response, however you want to look at it? And, you know, again, what does that response look
And
like?
even long-term goals of building a fire station.
Right,
Long-term goals of.
How do you accomplish that? How do we work with that? And how does that compare to what we're getting from Gresham? But I think we also, we have to ask Gresham, what is what's their bid to us?
I know.
Right? Like, and what does that include? And here's what our wants are, and how does that, you know, what do they eliminate?
But I guess one of the scary things would be is, what if Gresham's levy fails?
Yeah.
Then I think they're gonna be looking for a larger check from us than what
That
they
could
would
be one
looking
reason
for.
why they're waiting to even come to the table to talk to us, because then it can be significantly more than District 10.
I met with their union president, Gresham Fire's union president, and they support a fire district from the firefighter point of view. Like, when we met, that's what, not like pushing it or anything, it's just like, we just had a conversation to introduce each other, but that's the route that they see what would be best for them to be able to perform their jobs to the best of their abilities, for, again, what that's worth to everybody.
So as a group, could we tell Ray, at least charge one to bring Mike back in to have a little Q&A?
Yes.
So Ray, there's one.
Okay,
But then on Tuesday night, didn't Chief Lewis say something about them needing updated things done to their buildings? And
Oh,
yeah, I thought he said quite a
basically
bit of
every
stuff
building that they
needed
have
something.
needed something.
And then how stupid Troutdale was, I remember that very
Multiple.
clearly, multiple stupidities.
I think it was
of-
5 times he said,
how
it might have been
Troutdale
4,
was.
but I think it was 5.
Might have been 6.
So, could have been. What is that gonna cost us on top of what they already want? I mean, I
But then
just,
is it a period of time that we get some of this stuff done too?
right, and if we're gonna have to do it anyway, as a District 10, I think we need to look at those options. You know, and maybe having somebody come in and do whatever you call it, survey or whatever to.
A study on
a s-
fire station,
Mhm,
one or more.
would be a good idea.
But let's also keep in mind, what is the cost associated with that? That's another question we gotta
Yeah,
answer.
that's
For
tonight.
what?
Just to do another survey assessment, to have somebody come in and say, what is it gonna cost to?
How much is that normally?
Well,
As many things as we do.
if the goal is one or more of fire stations, what would it cost, right? Then you end up having to answer that question no matter what you do.
Right.
Whether you stay with Gresham or do a fire district. Or do
Well, I think, you know,
You need those numbers.
are we gonna charge staff with getting somebody on board to do an assessment of what it's gonna take to start a Troutdale Fire Department? I mean, what that.
I guess there's two
startup cost
questions
would
here
be.
then, is that do you want to give staff direction to, one, do that endeavor to hire a consultant to create a fire or Three Cities Fire Department, which will probably cost $15,000 to $20,000? And or do you want us to hire a consultant to be able to explore all of the details of what it would entail to join Fire District 10 and what impact that would exactly, really get the real numbers, what it would free up in the general fund, what it would cost the
Right.
citizens to do it, and just do that analysis. There's probably less than 10 grand just for that part of it. So I guess those
None
are
of-
two
none of this
things you
is
can ask us to do.
Cheap, but I mean,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're doing right by our citizens of all, I mean, we all got to mind the checkbook, so
Well,
speak freely, Tanny.
no, we typically have money in the budget every year for fire study.
Okay.
That we don't always use, and, we spent 20 grand last week to sponsor a couple of events. And I put this up against that, frankly, as a priority for our citizens.
Red, do you guys have I know that the three cities, so us, Fairview and Wood Village, are kind of in unison and are joined together. My question would be how important is it for us to move forward with based on what Gresham's decision is going to be, how they're going to move forward?
Well, in some ways, moving forward by ourselves doesn't get us very much, except that it frees up money in the general fund. Because if we go forward by ourselves and join Fire District 10 and none of the other three cities join us, that fails. Fire District 10 is just gonna hire Gresham to do what they're doing now, and we have no real control, and we're just paying, it'll probably be the same amount by that time in our general fund as it is with property taxes. If it was the three cities who all said yes, because see, Gresham doesn't have the we want to control argument. We do. So if the three cities voted to join Fire District 10, it's a good question. Mike's only one of 5 members on the board, but it's a good question to ask him. Would Fire District 10 think of getting back into the fire service game? You own the one fire station that primarily serves the three cities. You got a training center down 191st. They have another fire station out on 302nd and Pleasant Valley Road. So it's a good question. Now I haven't mentioned before, but I have asked Mike to be on their agenda next time the fire board has a meeting, just to let them know, because I've talked to Mike and another board member, David Keller, just in generally conversation about what we're thinking. But I said it's time for Troutdale to give that whole board and say, hey, we may want a date soon to the idea of marrying you, and get the whole board's reaction to it in a public meeting, and ask these questions of them. These are the things that we're going to be asking ourselves. And on the study, by the way, we just did have a three cities city manager and three cities mayor meeting a week and a half ago. And one of the things that was asked, and I haven't gotten an answer from Greg Dirks, Rachel Fuller, the interim city manager of Fairview, and I both thought that we all agreed the three cities would collectively come up with $150,000 to do just get a consultant and start down this road of exploring a fire district. So Troutdale's share is about half that, 75,000. And Rachel thought, he said, each of us come up with $150,000, which sounds like an awful lot of money for fire studies and getting ready for it. So I don't know. We're trying to find that answer out. So anyway, the three cities are in agreement, though. We're going to work together to try to get an answer for ourselves on this issue. Fairview, like Gresham, is much more precarious in their financial situation. More of their general fund revenue goes to fire, police, and 911 than Wood Village and us do. But it just means in 10 years we'll be there. They're there now, like Gresham is. So does that answer the question? So I guess that's the question. Does anybody think, does the group think that we need a study?
Yeah, I
to-
just want to make sure we're giving staff the
Right.
correct charge.
Is there anybody think we ought to have a study to, what would it take to create a three cities fire department if we just did it ourselves, Second of all,
Are you saying it's premature for that, though?
no, I'm asking, just like we did with the police, regardless of what happens with Gresham and happens with Fire District 10, if you want that to be, if you think that's an option that might sell with the citizens, because they would have to vote on it because we need a bond levy to set that up. Do you want us to start getting those numbers, just to see if you think it's doable to make that one of the, let me back up a little bit, Rich. What are the options that we really think are credible and are doable? One is a new contract with Gresham, probably doable. Getting the citizens to vote for Fire District 10, less doable, but doable. Creating our own Three Cities Fire Department, is that advisable and doable in terms of the size of the department, in terms of the money, the bond levy? Is that something citizens would support? Do you think that's something we should even pursue as an opportunity? And if we are, we should find out what that costs to operate and what it costs to set it up, like we did with the police. Police is different, of course, because we own the building. We already have the facility, and we've done it before. Fire, we've never done before. A lot of cities do it, not in the Portland area, but a lot of cities do it. So I guess that's the question, is studying what it would take to form our own fire department worth pursuing or not? Because I think pursuing a study regarding joining Fire District 10, that's already kind of in the works, and I think that's kind of assumed that
And
we
we
should
only
do
have
it.
just speaking out loud, we only have the opportunity to do this once. And I think we got to keep every option open. I'm in favor of doing the study. It's a lot of money, but I think doing right by our citizens is to explore the options that are on the table to do this right. But we don't know if it's right, we don't know if it's wrong until we do the study.
Well, and then it gives
My
you-
opinion.
Yeah, that gives you, and then that gives you an answer to one of your questions. Here's the cost associated with this. And that can answer,
Helps make the decision.
right, it helped you, you know,
Or at least sell the decision. right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
I think, Ray, we, doing a head check around the table, we got to keep all three options viable. So I think we do have to have a consultant tell us both the fire district and starting our own Three City.
Okay.
Now, if you're gonna tell them to do that, you have to tell them what your response time expected is
Right, because that'll determine the staffing.
for medical and for fire. So do you remember what the insurance companies prefer for fire response time? Like if it's below this number, fire insurance is, for a house is lowered by the citizens. If it's over this number, then it goes to the next tier.
I think it was in the Wood Village study, but I may not have printed that page for you. Yeah, because if you do, to do that, I mean, I'll probably check, first of all, with Jensen Strategies, who's doing the police one, to see if they've got some fire people on retainer, which is what they do. Because, again, that's gonna have to include capital costs, property acquisition, building, construction costs. And then, of course, the issue is, do you want to, which one of the models, let's just say, which one of the models from the 2014 study, is it, you know, I guess if it's just for us, that's another question, because we don't know what Wood Village and Fairview would do, because if we went that route, everything I've said in our study from 2014 said you ought to have two stations, at least a second station that's the substation. But if it's just Troutdale, again, it's harder and more expensive to do a smaller department. But
I think on the two stations, one had a truck and a
Yeah.
smaller medical response vehicle, and the other one had a small response vehicle. It's like we're saying, if you're going to respond to medical, you don't need 4 people. If you're responding to a fire, you do. And the two stations would complement each other for a fire, which is far less often. And then the truck just has to be as large as can handle your largest building should have in town.
yeah, I think a lot of it may be, and Portland State, I don't know, does this stuff anymore, but, you know, Portland State kind of did all that work for a bunch of scenarios, and, you know, it obviously have to be updated to current numbers. Property values have gone up a lot in the last 10 years.
But I think that's
Okay,
kind of where we're sitting.
okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
It's more
Yeah.
for maybe Ray, or just like, and I know you guys have been through this before, Rich. So can you just like kind of explain to me how this works? I mean, we're going through this committee, we're gathering information that we present to the council. I'm assuming once we have more information on all these things, would this committee, give its recommendation, like with all this information, we're giving you all the information, this would be our recommendation, this is what, is that, I don't know if that's how that works, and then what's the next step of how this whole process plays out?
But couple thoughts on what to do. Here's the problem we always operate in doing a 3-city fire department, because it requires a bond levy. There's no way the 3 cities can afford the set startup cost for fire department, all right? That requires 3 separate cities to vote on it. What if one doesn't pass it? And it fails, then that option's dead in the water, because the other 2 cities probably can't afford to do it on their own. The other thing comes down to with Gresham, on the other 2 options, going with Fire District 10 or going with Gresham again, if we can't get Gresham to talk to us seriously until after the May 7th election, then we just have to sit on our hands till after the May 7th, because until they find out what their bond levy happens, they're gonna be in a different mental state. If it passes, they're like, oh, we got time to take care of this problem, we got a little bit more money, we'll be good for another 5 years. If they lose it, they're gonna be scrambling, going, all right, maybe we're gonna have to go to plan B, which is a fire district, and maybe they will cooperate. Because getting Gresham to cooperate on a fire district would be helpful. We still have the same kind of problem as there's 4 jurisdictions that have to say yes.
But
and-
timing on that,
Yeah.
whenever everybody leaps into the fire district, that
Yeah.
is a little bit easier. Everybody doesn't have to do it all.
Right, at least we're on the boat together. Yeah. See, this is why I told the council a couple months ago that the fire one's a lot more complicated to deal with than the police one in certain ways. Maybe they'll ask us for more money than Multnomah County Sheriff's Office than what we anticipate, but at least they haven't threatened it twice to almost double our costs.
Yes, Victoria.
In the Wood Village, paper, there's the thought of joining District 10 with a contract with Clackamas.
Yes. Here's the other option, and I speak without any authority to speak for Fire District 10 on this at all. Back in 2015, or earlier one time, when Fire District 10, they didn't even talk to the Clackamas County Fire District 1 about contracting with them, because at the time, the Borington Fire Department was kind of a blockade. It was between Fire District 10, which goes to the Multnomah County, Clackamas County border, and Clackamas County Fire District 1 stopped south of Boring, so about 4 or 5 miles from the Multnomah County border. So Fire District 10 and Fire District 1, Clackamas, were not contiguous, we're not border states with each other. So Fire District 1, Clackamas, would have to go through the Borington Fire Department to get to, it really wasn't a practical solution, they didn't even talk to them. Now, however, Boring Fire Department, which is me, we voted to join Fire District 1 Clackamas. So Boring Fire is gone. So Fire District 10 and Fire District 1 now share a border. They meet right at the Clackamas County, Multnomah County border. So I have mentioned that to them, and when I mentioned it, that hadn't really been part of their thinking before, but I would probably mention it to them if I when I go to their board meeting, just to find out, because one is Fire District 1 interested, and I already think in terms of negotiating. If you're only negotiating, because Gresham's your only, service provider, Gresham, who's threatened to increase fees for everybody, what are you gonna do if they put it higher than your people can afford? We don't have any place else to go. But if if Fire District 1 wants to talk to you, you can at least get a bid from them.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert on this, but I understand they have a slightly different service model than Gresham does.
Yeah, long ago, when I did EMT, I rode with mainly Clackamas and Washington County, and Clackamas is very good. Their model is different.
Right, and so I would like to encourage them, and I don't know how the fire world works. I mean, it is, because they're all just fire, that's all they do. They all kind of have their own environment and their own culture, and I don't know if Fire District 1 wants to go there, and 2, if they do, would they be comparable or less expensive than Gresham. I don't know.
And they did just do Sandy too.
Yeah, Sandy's an interesting one too, which is, I don't understand Sandy. And see, I don't know for sure, but I suspect, and I'll get to what I'm going to say about Sandy. I suspect that Sandy's going to do what I'm going to tell you they do, is because they could not afford to have an adequate fire department for Sandy if it was just a Sandy fire department. So what Sandy did, Sandy voted for, and they created a new special fire district, just the Sandy Fire District. So it's a separate legal entity, a separate board, and a separate line on their property tax payments in the city of Sandy. And they contracted with Fire District 1, Clackamas County, to run their fire district, not their city fire department, but their fire district in Sandy. And they had a fire station, right downtown Sandy's got that fire station. And so they contract the Sandy Fire District, not the city of Sandy, contracts with Clackamas County Fire District for the fire service in the city of Sandy. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. I didn't realize they'd done that until I started doing some research on it. Oh, it's a weird way to do it.
How do we even engage in conversation is it District 10 engage in conversation with District 1?
I would think so, because I don't know anybody at fire district, even though I'm in that district, I don't know. I guess I could find out who my board member is.
Yeah.
But I don't know that world. I assume those people hang out at the same bars and go to the same restaurants. I'm joking, but that they know people down there. Because I assume the fire districts talk amongst themselves. There's some connection between the two of them.
Coming from a firefighter family, I might ask around.
If you have any connections over there that might,
Yeah.
I don't even know who's on the board. So,
That's kind of an important point, because you got Gresham Fire District 10, your own fire district, your own fire department, or, there's lots of different ways you can slice this pie. I wanted to add, I didn't want to distract from the earlier conversation. Another important service of the fire department is fire inspections, right? I remember when I don't know if you two are here seeing this now, but when I was a counselor, it seemed like I got a lot of calls on complaints about, fire inspections and what's required of new businesses and so forth. And you expect some of that, right? Because you want your fire chief or whoever's doing the inspections to hold a standard that's going to keep the public safe. Not just do what the business wants to do, but keep in mind, keep the public safe. But there's a lot of interpretation in that too. Some could be unreasonable, some may not be unreasonable. And that's part of the whole control issue, if you're looking at the control issue. Whether or not you want more control over your fire district is how it interacts with your citizenry and your businesses.
yeah, I'm looking at the board of the Clackamas Fire District. Marilyn Wall, who's a business attorney, lives out there. Jim Searing is a retired Fire District 1 deputy chief, is on the board. Chris Hawes is on the board, and he was in construction, yeah. Too young. I graduated from Barlow High School also, so maybe I know that way. But Jay Cross, who's from Southern Oregon, and he's out in Boring area. He goes to Good Shepherd Church out in Boring. Oh, he started with Gresham Fire, and he's currently serves as there's the EMS officer for the city of Gresham, it looks like, fire department. Oh. And then finally, Thomas Joseph. He's interesting. He's an immigrant from India, served in the Indian Air Force, then moved to Portland, Oregon, and he owns a company. Anyway, that's their board.
So they have diverse representation.
They really do, in terms of the different people, where they're from, and yeah. So in that world, because I know there's at least one fire district 10 board member who's a retired firefighter and probably is in that firefighter world, and on their board, they have 2 people from the firefighting world, professional world. That's why they kind of know each other, so. It's in this process something to ask, but what I'm hearing tonight is that go ahead and find out if I can find somebody to do a study on really just what it costs if we tried to do it ourselves. And I'm sure it doesn't really cost that much more to do it for the 3 cities. What would be the total cost? Because that, in the economics of scale and operation, it's probably better to do it that way. It's just to have let's just say a $4 million fire department, annual budget for fire department, it's a pretty small fire department for the city of Troutdale. The thing is that when you have extra resources around, you can pull from them. So like Gresham is such a big fire department, they can pull from 6 different stations, the trucks and the people they need for something important. And they also, and I don't know how they work, they have mutual aid agreements with Portland also, and probably Clackamas County. So if they have a really big 3-alarm fire, the other people come too. And as I understand it, it's for free, but then you're expected to go to their fires too, if they need you. I'll find out first, we can get a study for that. Say that. And the other thing is that I'm just thinking the other 2 options, getting Gresham to give us a bid and getting Gresham to start taking seriously a fire district and maybe use the same company for their study, it's going to have to wait till after May 7th. I'll talk to
It's a little bit different for them to join the fire district because they have all the assets to work in.
And they don't know what's going to happen to them, but they're going to serve 90% of the same people anyway.
Right.
And so the fire district, if they join Fire District 10, they're going to be the major votes in Fire District 10, and they're going to, I don't know how that, Newburgh just did it 5 years ago, so can't be hard. Well, maybe hard, but it's not undoable.
Okay. And then you're gonna, Mike, come talk to us or try to work it in.
Yeah. The other thing I will do, I will ask, because I know Mayor Lauer talks to Mayor Stovall occasionally, the 4 mayors talk occasionally, and I will ask him to ask mayors.
Yeah, just to ask him if it's his intention that we're not gonna talk until.
Yeah, are they gonna just be mum until after May 7th? Or
Yeah.
are we just spitting, because we can we'll meet every month and talk about stuff, but we may not have a lot to talk about until Gresham's ready to come to the table. And they won't be ready until they know what their situation is after May 7th.
Does Stovall want to talk to us?
Probably.
Does he want to? No.
No, I mean, as far as talk to us as a group, right?
I don't know.
That chair right there.
Yeah. Again, he probably wants to wait till after May 7th, because he doesn't, again, he hasn't been dealt all his cards yet. The thing about a card game, he hasn't been dealt all his cards. If he's dealt a bond levy that passes, he comes in a different position. If he's dealt no bond levy passes, he's dealt a different set of cards. And so I do appreciate why they maybe not want to make any decision until after May 7th, because it changes their scenarios.
I bet you he knows what his problems are.
Yeah.
What he needs to do.
I don't know if that bond levy, that's not gonna solve their problems forever.
Oh, it
You're
punts
gonna,
it.
it's just gonna roll in, so I think it's really important for us to have all of our things, and we wait on them, I mean, that's fine. We have all of our, 3, 4 options, whatever they all are,
Yeah.
ready to go. We have those holstered. We get our stuff from them, whatever that is, and then now we can compare, contrast. But I think we also have to keep in mind, and if we do think of the fire district, in my mind, is that Gresham's gonna, if this thing bond passes, 5 years, they're gonna be back in the same boat, because they're so far regressed from where they need to be in terms of updating their structures and all this, that they're gonna be in the same boat in another 5 years. And do we want to have a 5-year contract that we have to now do this all over again? Or would we rather, hey, let's go to if we went to a fire district, if that ends up being something we can agree on, that said, this is gonna take you out a long ways. Like, you don't have to worry about this in 5 years and just keep doing this process over and over and stressing and worrying. I would rather have something that's gonna be set and we can count on to be there for us.
We're gonna need the information, because I don't know how many of us have worked on trying to get bonds through, but if you're going to get a bond through and there's economic pressure on the citizenry, you better have a darn good reason to be able to get that over that hurdle.
And be able
And it's a tough
communicate.
Really
that.
hard to get a bond passed,
right? If,
especially here.
if timing is everything.
We're gonna be
because
knocking on a lot of doors.
If we were gonna do this
Yeah.
a few years from now, when the economy might be upswinging,
Sure,
it's a lot easier.
yeah.
Right?
I just wanna make sure we have it so we can think about these things, and if we,
Right
you
now
know,
it's
like,
gonna be a
and those are
tough
good
time
things,
to
like,
do
I
that.
wouldn't have never thought about that, like now's not a good time because the economy's down in 4 years, like, it's gonna be back up, and that's a better time, and those are things you learn along
But
the
at the
way.
at the same time, Gresham's wanting more money. So whether
A
you
lot
can't afford it now, they're still wanting more money. So to me, it'd be worth getting all that information
Absolutely.
so we can go to the negotiation table and go, hey,
You're out.
It's not worth it to
we're
us,
done,
Yeah.
right?
you know, or we're in, one or the other. But I think we need information to go battle.
That's
We need to be able to say, oh, it sounds like a good deal, or no, that's just not worth it to us.
That's
Right now,
not,
we
that's
don't
not
know.
what our consultants are telling us, like, you're way off base, so.
I don't
So
know that
we-
in 5 years, Gresham would be back with the same boat. I think it'd be more like a ship. You know, it'd be something a little bigger.
Or
Hey,
some-
and I don't know if any of these things still exist, but I was just taking a look, and we've got 50,000 in this year's budget for a city hall study. And I don't know that we use that. 80,000 in there for CFEC, which we know we're not doing.
I am going to use some of the city hall money. I'm waiting for a bid from a company to do some work for me on the city hall.
All right.
But
50,000
yeah, CFEC,
for,
we got a whole other year.
yeah, 50,000 for downtown parking study, 50,000 for town center implementation. Is there any fact we can kind of shimmy off of this for a fire project? These are all out of the
Yes.
general fund.
As Eric tells you, we can always find the money. I mean, it's in there because we never spend all the budgeted money. So there's always
That's what
some,
we hear, yeah.
what you hear is what the auditor said. Excuse me, it's what the auditor said.
I just want to be fiscally responsible for our citizens.
Yeah, oh, yeah. But I don't want to be like some of the other large, I won't name names, government agencies in the metro area who study things for years and to death.
No, I won't let us do that. I won't.
But I think if we had 80 grand in there for CFEC and we said, hey, we couldn't afford to do a fire study, people
Yeah.
would be going, what?
Well, I've got a list of
Good point.
5 things to do before our next meeting, is what I've got. Number 1, I'm gonna talk to Jensen Strategies to see if they have somebody to do a study about starting a fire department here. Same thing. I'm gonna ask Mike McKeel to come to our next meeting to tell us about the ins and outs of a fire district. How does it really work? What goes on there, in truth? I'm gonna ask Eco Northwest. Eco Northwest did a part of a study that I will send to you, their studies. I don't think I've sent it to you all. Where they did a lot of work on calculating the costs and issues involved with the fire district for the citizens. And I'm wondering, I know Gresham struggled really hard about, they haven't been able to find a consultant to help them with it yet, but they're doing a whole RFP on it. I think they're looking to find out how it would work how we get rid of our assets if we join the fire district. I mean, I think they're doing this big study that we don't need, and they haven't been able to find someone. But if we're just looking for economic impact on our citizens, that's something that maybe Econ can do. So I'll talk to them and get a report back to you. We will ask, I'll go talk to try to get on the agenda for Fire District 10 to ask them if they want to start dating, at least as a possibility down
Is
the
that a
road.
public forum?
Yes.
Could you maybe shoot an email out for anybody that wants to either listen in or come to?
Oh, yeah, if I get it when I find out. They just had a board meeting at the end of February, so I don't know how often they have the next one.
Okay.
But Mike said, oh, sure, we'll get you on. And he didn't tell me what it was. So I need to ask him, when is it? And then the other thing is I'm going to, I have a name of a company that a lot of government agencies use when they're doing bond levies about strategy. Maybe I should see if they can come into our next meeting and talk about, if you went Fire District 10, what type of timeline would you need? What kind of stuff works well to try to inform the citizens of, I don't know, I can't remember, it's 3 letters. I wrote it down in my notes back in my office.
Yeah, because I know certain times of the year, certain election cycles, there's whole strategies behind trying to.
Right, and
Yeah.
get somebody to tell you, if you decide to go Fire District 10 vote, which would be similar to a bond levy for a school district, what are the timelines? How do we lay that out? What do we need to do to
Yeah,
get that,
it's
just
good.
a strategy?
That's a good call.
And then finally, I will ask Mayor Lauer to talk to Gresham to confirm or deny that they're gonna be incognito, silent running until after May 7th on this whole discussion of fire district, or even thinking about what they want to charge us officially.
Okay.
Beyond 2025, so that's the list.
Anybody else have anything to add to that?
What about slackness?
I was just gonna say, yeah,
And
I need
then,
to dabble.
maybe.
That would be something you could raise with Mike McKeel when he's here, how's that? I mean, wait, no, you,
I'll see
I
if
have
can-
got 6 things.
I'll
The
see if I
chair
can
has
do a little
one thing.
research.
He's gonna do his own research on the insiders he may know in fire circles, that secret society of fire people.
And I'd be aware about running it when the school district is running their levy. They're coming out with the bond. See, presidential, the year, I think after the presidential election.
That'd be an easy one to win. Do you want to put money into the school where they're not really teaching their kids, or do you want to be safe at home?
I have no comment.
I think I'm gonna die.
Yeah, and you know, this spring,
You need to
May,
ride home.
here's the thing, that May is gonna have the bond levy for the levy district, you know, the $150 million bond levy to get the matching funds from the feds and the state to do all the infrastructure on the levy out here. Metro's got their Penguin bond levy that the council's gonna hear about on April 9th. Primarily Penguin upgrades at the zoo,
The zoo.
and then,
They haven't
Gresham-
done their last bond yet,
Yeah.
just saying.
well, yeah, it's not gonna increase your taxes, we'll just continue the increase that we did, you know, last time, because it's gonna replace the last bond. And then Gresham's gonna have their bond levy on May 7th. And is there anybody else that, does Multnomah County have one this time? Oh, they were gonna do one to raise more money for kindergarten or pre-kindergarten school, but they
We already
didn't.
did that.
There it is.
Right, but they were
Yeah, they're
gonna
doing it in
they were gonna ask for more money,
That's,
and then they didn't do it. So, anyway, so
Kindergarten for all 2.0.
Okay, off topic, stay on course.
So anyway, so Mr. Chair, I've got 6 to-dos and a couple things that will be on our next meeting. So is there anything else? And you've got one job.
Yep, so are we, any more discussion for this evening?
Well,
Yes, sir.
he was just talking about Fire District 10. Should we consider our own? In Fire District 10.
Oh, a new
lot-
fire district?
Yeah, he said Fire District 10 a lot bigger than the service area we're really kind of interested in. We talked about a smaller one.
What do you mean?
Starting a new fire district.
Oh,
And I know there was in this study, there's a little tougher.
Or is it because there's already one?
yeah, there's already one that covers our area that we could join. I will send you the Gresham, I'll send you the Gresham one, which talked about the difference between the two, starting a new one or joining Fire District 10, because they did have a couple pages on each of those scenarios. So maybe that would answer some of your questions as to that process.
Some other questions, should we be studying that as well?
Well, I'll send it to you. That's on my list of things to do. I will forward you the Gresham Economic Study on Fire from May of 2022. And in there, they talk about the difference between starting your own fire district and joining Fire District 10. So maybe read that first, and then next meeting, tell me if you got more questions. Is that what you're kind of looking for, Rich? Maybe get a starting
And
point?
it's already, kind of already did a study.
They did some information on it.
At
That's
least
what
work.
wasn't there a chief that came before and talked about fire? I want to say 5 or 10 years ago, that
Oh, yeah.
presented it to city council, and there was a big, huge. Am I on the right track?
Yep.
He came and he addressed stuff on how to do our own fire.
Yeah, do you remember his?
Oh, that was Dave from Corbett, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I don't remember, I don't
Yeah.
remember.
yeah.
Yeah, and see, and he comes from a volunteer model, and if you read all the reports, most reports these days go, ooh, this day and age in a metro area, volunteer fire is not
Okay.
a sustainable model.
It was a hybrid, it was like 50/50.
Yeah, you
It's
can
like
just go
half
hybrid.
volunteer, half paid
Yeah.
staff.
The problem is that, yeah, people in your community, one, recruiting people to do it is hard, the training is much more than it used to be, and quite often the people volunteer, well, they work at Intel over in Beaverton or something, how are they gonna get here to help you in a timely fashion?
Well, I believe
Yeah.
we're actually talking about full-time service within Troutdale.
Yeah.
And still having volunteer service up in Corbin.
Yeah, they have a blended hybrid up there, don't they? Yeah. So,
Just curious.
anything else? I've got a pretty good list of things to do, and, I don't feel so alone, Jordan, because you're doing something too.
Okay, let's look at our calendars real quick and see what's,
You give him your new email.
I would
You've been
start with the same pattern we're doing is April 1st or April 8th, a Monday evening, if this continues to work well for people, would be the 1st or 8th. Wouldn't want to push too close to the week of the budget meetings.
First is sooner.
Yeah.
First is Easter Monday. I don't know if that matters to anybody. I'm
I'm
just saying, that's what my
And April
calendar says.
Fools.
As long as you're done eating by
Yeah,
then.
budget committee meetings start on the 15th of April. So if you were on the 1st or the 8th, then
I would
it's,
go for the 8th, but
okay.
I'm good with the 8th here.
8th,
I'll make time.
I might be out of town on the 1st, I'm not sure.
So let's do the 8th.
So it's the 8th, is everybody?
Yep.
Looking
Okay,
around the room.
all right, April 8th,
April 8th.
good, it'll be done, then we'll have another meeting for the next council meeting, because I'm supposed to give a report every month to the council on what you guys do, so. The next council meeting that month is on April 9th, so it's done in time.
I do gotta bring up one point.
I was gonna do a round robin for everybody, but.
Oh, sure, no, that's fine. That'll work.
Hey, Rich, why don't you give us our comments? Closing comments for the evening?
Gosh,
Yeah.
oh, apropos.
So it should not be assumed that Carol and I talk. We're married. We don't necessarily talk. She knew about this meeting, I did not. And so I need to update my email.
I think somebody mentioned that.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's going to an email I can't read anymore.
tell me what email you want, write it down. Can I read his writing, Carol?
Yes, you can. He's very nice
Good.
writing.
Because
Tanny, do you have anything for the group?
No.
Lila?
I'm good, thank you.
Sorry,
no.
Carol. Come on, give me something. Something.
Turkey 63?
Yeah.
Okay. Comcast.
Some
it's easy.
teachers
Okay,
teach the
Comcast email.
students.
Yes, some teachers do teach students. No, I think it was good conversation. And I appreciate your apology on, what, last week? Was it last week when
Council meeting.
council met?
Yeah.
It made me feel a little bit better. So I appreciate that. So now I don't have to jump on you for anything at this moment. Maybe later, but not at this moment.
You left the knife at home?
there's always the future.
So it's always, so anyway. That's it.
Jeffrey?
I think this was a great, really good discussion. I know I was frustrated by my words, how they were interpreted, so I do appreciate that you guys were able to listen to that. I do look forward to working together. I think that I always learn something from people's, whether it was the past, the future, today, or how it went for you when you did this the last time, et cetera. And everybody has a different view of what's important to them. And so I appreciate getting all that information. And like I said, my main goal with this is that I want to make sure that people of Troutdale have the best possible service for the best possible price, and that everybody is able to be served, the most efficiently. And so I think we can all agree it's going to cost more, but we want to make sure that we feel heard and valued for what we're getting. So.
And I'll just say thank you to everybody here. I know this is volunteer time, and I appreciate every one of you. And I enjoy this group a lot and what we do and the discussion. It's a good group. I do enjoy it. So thank you. Appreciate it. And with that, I will take a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. I got a motion to adjourn. I got a second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Now, who seconded the motion
It's
for
a
the